Scissors. Bigger scissors. Earbuds. Oh, we're losing him. Clear! I mean, clear! I mean, clear!
Alive. Where's my Labubu?
Oh yeah, you mean like the little monster toy? Yeah, that was in the other room. It's in the other room down the hall. We'll get it for you once everything's finished around here. Doctor, is everything okay? I have to go now. I have to go now. You can't just leave. What about the patient? Hello? Hello? I probably didn't have to do all that, but I felt like it, so there's that. Anyways, if you've been on the interwebs recently, specifically Instagram or TikTok, you might have heard this little thing called the performative man, which of course existed for years upon years, decades upon decades. There has always been this archetype of human being. But if you don't know, the modern performative man nowadays has been narrowed down to a very general aesthetic of things that lean a bit into being very easygoing, relaxed, and well put together. But the motivation to pursue such an aesthetic lies within wanting some amount of accolades or an intimate relationship, specifically with women. And for a lot of people, this is typically looked down upon for its lack of transparency and everyone's favorite buzzword as of late, authenticity. But you know what? How about we break this man down and see what else there is to hate? Because while there have been performative men in the past, there hasn't really been nearly as much of a collective agreement and distaste for that matter against this type of person. So with that being said, what about the visuals? What about the fits? So this is probably the biggest visual indicator for any performative man, because if they're not doing anything, like quite literally just standing there menacingly, and I really mean menacingly here, because they're always posted up on some nonchalant shit, the fit is what will typically be the easiest identifier, at least for this current era of performative men. So the formula usually goes cropped or fitted tee, very oversized and heavyweight denim, either as just jeans or jorts, and either a meta sneaker like Sambas or combat boots like Docs. Usually they'll layer their shirt with a cropped short sleeve flannel, and for accessories there's a Labubu carabiner combo and either wired Apple earbuds or AirPod Maxes depending on their tax bracket. And of course, there's some variance to these fits. Like I've seen the tee be swapped out for a jersey, and sometimes there's even some wild card variants. Like they'll still give off the same vibe with like, for example, there's this one dude I saw in the same exact fit, but then he was wearing a pair of Ritz, which just didn't match the energy of his fit at all. And I saw another dude, and instead of the typical tote bag, he had this like full leather LV bag, and for both actually, I just couldn't help but think, why do you have that? Why do you have that? Like surely you were just spawned in with just like different stats, right? Like you were just given a different circumstance, right? Please, like how do you have those things? I also want to add for both of those fits actually, they both reminded me of this photo. So do with that information what you will. But usually the fits fall into the formula of small top, heavy bottoms with boots or skinnier silhouetted sneakers. And if I may, this fit isn't that bad. Honestly, I might even call it solid. And I get it, right? Like, boo, but I thought we don't like performative motherfuckers. Yeah, I know. But honestly, the formula here is good. Like, it has a good play on proportions. There's a little bit of room to add. And overall, it's a good baseline fit. So why do we hate this fit so much? Well, it's partially just an association we've made with this type of guy, which if the perception of that association is inherently already negative, well, there you go. But I also think that it's a lot of exhaustion from overexposure, because this style has been a thing for a couple years now, and people found it cool then, but now with performative men just kind of reaching for this fit, the sauce has been kind of diluted, similar to what happened with the huge earth tones era. Oh my gosh, wait, hold on, that actually... No, that actually gave me full body chills. Like, those were dark times. However, I want to say that another big aspect that's had a lot of negative reception is with the overemphasis of objectivity in fashion. Not to say that there's no objectivity in fashion, it's just that there's so much focus for these guys on like quality and how heavyweight their pieces and the rules of fashion. As for fashion advice, the biggest talking point for performative men has been the rule of thirds, specifically the small tops, big bottoms, like I mentioned, which there's nothing wrong with this type of fit, but it's just the way they tend to talk about how important this rule is, as if there's an optimal way to style, like there aren't other style cues that work just as well, even within the rule of thirds scope. Like, take this fit for example. Technically, it follows the rule of thirds as well by exaggerating the proportions of a certain piece, but even then, let me just break the rules, like boom, full baggy, boom, full skinny, boom, basic straight fit, and crop tee. Like, all these fits are good and don't have to necessarily follow this optimal style cue that performative men rave about, as if it makes them more knowledgeable about fashion. And on the topic of being knowledgeable, I think the biggest aspect that seems to garner the worst reception for their fashion sense is that there is this underlying attitude that they act so above others despite this fit having been checked. But it really is wild because so many performative men just carry this sense of superiority to show that they're really into fashion, as if they have something to prove. So there's this whole motivation that's completely external, which causes them to limit themselves down to this narrow lens rather than allowing themselves to explore everything there is to this medium. And if anything, that's the most performative part of their approach to fashion. And if I may, because I'm gonna relate this to another point later, but I feel like I might as well point this out now. When you guys are doing fit checks, why do you guys do this? Like I said, there's nothing wrong about your fits. It's just, why do you want your pants to sound like this? Tortilla chip ass fit, both in sound and feel. I'm gonna get so sidetracked, so I think I should actually shut the fuck up and move on. So the next thing we got going on with men of performance are the other things he consumes. Because while yes, fashion is a big form of consumption, they still have to technically create something. And so with these next things, it's strictly something they have to absorb. So there's of course the matcha sipping, labubu collecting, feminist literature, and self-help reader and listener of any of these artists right here. And all of these things really mesh together well into a very cohesive aesthetic that just makes sense. These are all seemingly unproblematic on their own, and like the fit, these are all things that individually aren't really contributing to any issues. Rather, it's the way they're all consumed at this surface level, yet the performative consumers of these things carry so much confidence in their understanding, acting as if they're some sort of like enthusiast. I'd say for matcha and labubus, it's typically pretty easy to enjoy casually, especially with how much supply there is, but some of these guys can be very show-offy with these things, which I'm sure they're becoming more aware of how it doesn't really help their case. But I specifically want to talk about the feminist and self-help book readers, and those with a very particular taste in music, because I feel like these play such a big role in selling a fake package to people that might want to build a solid connection. So starting off with the choice in literature, again, there's nothing wrong with the themes of these books, and they should be consumed, but it's things like reading them in a crowded space where you could easily be observed Like, that part actually happens a surprising amount. Like, even without the books, these guys made loitering a sport. It's like competitive almost. I'm not actually gonna elaborate on that. It just makes sense in my head, so yeah. But back on topic, it's just trying to sell this character that would seem like they're for the girls and they're so in tune with their vulnerable side. But regardless of how much they read, they don't really apply or really even talk in much depth about the points these books even make. Or for music, right? Like, I feel as though that this is even more impactful towards selling this fake. But seriously, music is just so big in most people's livelihoods to where people's artist spreads and personal connection with their work is pretty influential to a lot of people's perceptions of each other. That's kind of the thing though, because the performative man only really has the artist spread, but they don't have much of a connection, which, okay, like, that sounds so pretentious, I know. But a lot of the time, this music taste is curated to, again, come off as very laid back or in tune with one's vulnerability. And so, for the girls, with all these artists being pretty big, all things considered. So, it's pretty easy for these types of guys to just pick their favorite songs based off the artist's top 10 and be able to get at least some positive acknowledgement, which is the first step in what they're typically seeking. So then, because their taste really isn't developed through having connected to these songs or relating them to life experiences and having this sense of intimacy with these works of art, then it gets pretty easy for people to see through this fake. And I know it just sounds like we can't have shit around me, which I get, but that's also kind of the point, because once we built this connection with a performative man under the assumption that you really enjoy these artists, books, and miscellaneous pieces of people's lifestyles, we'll get this bad feeling when we really can't relate to each other when talking about any of these things. Not to say that it's bad to have different opinions about the same hobbies, more like there's just this dissonance when one person just doesn't quite understand the significance of these things for the other person. And well, that can be really disappointing for the person on the receiving end, especially when they find out that there was this hidden motivation and their interests were kind of used to leverage a sense of vulnerability. And it's all because the performative individual didn't commit to learning more about these things, which makes sense because most people under this guise don't like these things enough to really find the need. And on the topic of commitment, we love it when people are passionate about things. There's something so interesting seeing people talk about the things they love. But with this current era of performative men, not only is it this disingenuous playbook to getting accolades, but it's this entire mass manufacturing rooted in this thought process. Like, I didn't realize Shein and Temu started making people. But the thing with this era is that all these performative men want to come across as passionate in all these things, but whether they're interested in it or not, they do the bare minimum while acting like they know it all. It's almost the equivalent of reading out the bullet points to your class presentation and expecting an A. They're literally getting Spark Notes and AI summaries to hobbies. And like AI generated content and fast fashion, this utilitarian outlook performative men have on hobbies is entirely unsustainable. To put it into perspective, some damage this current type of performative man has done is first in, of course, ruining people's ability to trust those with a mutual interest. Which, like I said, it's only a matter of time when people find out that someone's leveraging an interest for their own personal gain and not to actually enjoy the thing itself. And well, that's not going to feel good for the people on the receiving end because it makes them question, was this connection that was initially built on mutual interests even genuine? Or another point of damage performative men have caused is in the sheer number of them flocking to this aesthetic and lifestyle, but at a surface level, which later diluted a lot of these hobbies for others as so many people saw how many performative men took on this lifestyle, and a large chunk of people are sadly so quick to associate all these things with being performative, either as just a bit which can get annoying fast, or as a genuine reflex to push people away. But of course, there's so much more nuance to these issues and the social impact current performative men have. Even then, let's say you are worried about being performative. I know so many people that enjoy these things but just can't be seen enjoying them publicly out of annoyance that the things they like are just kind of tainted by this association. And it's gotten to the point where, and actually I felt this, where you question shit like, what if I'm the problem? Meanwhile, I just put on a cropped tee and nothing happened. But I feel as though that concern has happened to a decent amount of people where they want to enjoy something, but they're worried about, oh, can I be perceived as problematic for this? And well, there's a lot to this, I feel. In a very general explanation though, I think if you enjoy these things but haven't explored a ton in terms of depth, then like sit down with yourself and think, can I see myself enjoying this for years upon years? If yes, well, then it might be a good time to commit and really dive deep into all these different avenues, which is actually not too difficult because you gave yourself this entry, and at a certain point you'll refine your taste, and then it's pretty undeniable that you really do enjoy these things. And well, if you don't enjoy certain things that fall into this associated aesthetic, that's fine too. Just be honest with how much you actually enjoy these, and maybe don't carry too much confidence, because that's what will really make you come off as performative. Plus, if you don't really like any of these things enough to push into that enthusiast, hobbyist territory that you might be acting towards, then realize there is so much other cool shit to explore, and it doesn't have to even be a dramatic change in interest either. Like, you don't have to overcorrect for anything really. And as for the people that are dedicated to their performative ways, just know this whole thing that you got going on for yourself is unsustainable for you too. Because think about it, right? Imagine with me here. You pursued this entire aesthetic between the music taste, clothes, and choice and literature. You did it all to get someone's attention, and typically it's to get women's attention in hopes of some sort of connection. And every time you do get some sort of compliment or even a look, you just feel so good about yourself. And you'd assume that isn't an issue for yourself, right? Because you feel so good about yourself. Isn't it okay to feel good? But then you really only feel good through something external, and nothing about the actual things themselves gave you a sense of personal satisfaction. So you never really connected to any of these things or took the time to create some sort of personalized meaning with them. So at the end of the day, these are all very hollowed out husks that you're gonna get bored of. And when these run their course, you're gonna be foaming from the mouth when the image you've created for yourself already isn't that enjoyable and doesn't get the same praise it once did, and you will forever end up with nothing. It's all just mild satisfaction that doesn't come from your engagement with the things themselves. It just comes from other people. Meanwhile, the highly happy are satisfied with the things they have, as they gave a very personal meaning to the things they like. So no matter how long they stick to these things, they can consistently go back to them and get a high level of enjoyment, at least compared to the other more fleeting interests. Like, this is their foundation and they love it unconditionally. And unlike your tortilla chip ass fit and the way you love to carry this overconfidence, the highly happy in this scope already proved to themselves that they like something. So they don't have to go around doing this to signal to the masses they like something, because they have this whole internal experience where they understand why they like the things they like. So there's no point for them to do this. And okay, get this. To all the performative men, like the unironic ones, all this current satire around this aesthetic will pass, and whether or not you stick to it is entirely up to you. But you'll really have to see if you want to stick to this or hop off. And if you do move away from this, what will be the reason you gravitate towards this next thing? Because under this current reason, you're not really helping other people and you're not helping yourself. So just give yourself some time and ask if you want to keep doing all this, or if you want to commit to something more sustainable and fulfilling. Actually, wait, I just sound so annoying, but you know, it is what it is. So actually, no, yeah, I think I got everything I wanted to say out of the way. You know, yeah, I'm pretty sure it all made sense. Video over.